He's only 8. It's cold and late, and he's sleeping over by the bus stop gate. It's where he makes camp until a cop comes. Then he breaks camp, and he goes, well, anywhere, everywhere. And what the hell is he even doing out here? And who knows? And who cares? And who cares as long as he just goes? So he hits the streets, he falls asleep, another cop comes, and the whole process repeats. But don't weep, because these mean streets taught the kid how to eat. Donuts from the dumpster, stealing bologna and mustard must make you think he's a thief or a cheat, but you must understand, this is how he eats. He learns all the right moves, all the night moves. And he learns how to pick and choose so he doesn't lose his change, his life, or his virtues. And he learns has to fight against the gang leaders, the drug dealers, the pimps, and the bitter cold all through the night until the break of sunlight when morning unfolds. Because even these mean streets on the roam are safer than home. Home, that's a joke of its own. This kid is all alone. And all he knows right now is that he's chilled to the bone. And then he sees a door. And he's hoping inside it's warm, so he slithers in like a snake, hoping to shake the bitter cold, and a whole new world unfolds. And it smells of must and sweat, and he'll never forget those 2 kids up in the ring going to war, and those punches sting, but they just keep throwing more and more. And an old man appears and says, hey, son, what are you doing here? And he goes, just warming up. Say, Pop, can you spare $1 for a drink or a treat? It's a little cold, and this is how I eat. And the kid has no father. There's no hero in his family, and the heroine in his family is a heroin-fueled Grammy, so he returns to the gym again and again and again. And he loves this thing, the smell, the ring, the song that the speed bag sings from its wall-mounted rack, bat-a-da, 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 bat, where his eyes are glued. And the old man, you must mean Coach, he's cool too. He kicks the kid a little cash and some of his wife's home-cooked food. And this place, it touches his soul. And for one time in his life, something makes the kid feel whole. And so go the years. The blood, the sweat, and the tears. And his speed, his power, and his size grows, and it's been quite a few years since he's moved in with his coach, and comes the day he decides to turn pro. So he and the old man travel the land, and every time they make a stand, it ends with the referee raising his hand, and all the reporters inquire, kid, from where comes this fire? And when the shy kid does speak, he says, it comes from the street, because this is how I eat. And the fighters come to test the boy. They do their best to destroy the boy, but they all stumble. And eventually they all crumble. Because he is the real deal, living up to the hype. Chewing them up in 10 rounds or all in one bite. Because like a hungry dog with a bone to chew, what he does is devours the meat and then eats the bone too. And now the fighters that come calling, they stay in their locker room stalling. And as the seconds tick, they're getting sick. They're having second thoughts about even going through with it. They've heard about his speed, his power, and his grit, and they know from where he comes, and that he won't ever quit. And then comes his night, the big fight. From the streets to showtime to fighting the champ for a world championship title belt on the line. And although on this night he's the contender, the kid has no doubt that he will lay the champ out, or he's going to make him surrender. And on this night, there are no cold streets. It's just him and the old man and 20,000 fans on the edge of their seats about to find out why this science is so sweet and what the kid meant when he said, this is how I eat. The bell rings, and all eyes are glued as the 2 fighters meet and do what 2 fighters do. And round after round after round, they give their all, but after 9 rounds, it's still too close to call. But then, in round 10. The kid spies something in the champ's eyes. It's something you learn when you've become streetwise. A flicker of hesitation, a split-second lack of concentration. He slides to his right like he did so many cold nights, and then like a cobra he strikes, unleashing a venomous right. And for the champ, it's simply good night. But up in the air, the kid does not leap. He simply kneels down to the champ at his feet and draws himself close to the man in defeat, and then whispers so clear into the fallen fighter's ear, "Didn't you hear? This is how I eat." Thank you. That's a poem I wrote about 11 or 12 years ago called "This Is How We Eat." I saw it on a tattoo of a kid that was sparring against Fernando over in D.C. And every time I'd compliment the kid about him doing something good, he'd say, "Hey, coach, this is how I eat." I wrote that and went back the next week to read it to him. And we were in a gym that's very similar to this one, that works with kids and takes kids off the streets and tries to turn their life around. Gyms like this all over the country that a lot of them don't get heralded or heard about, but they're certainly doing a lot of work. It's hard to imagine that it's even possible for this kind of story to be real. But other than two things, this story is pretty accurate. One, the coach was not an old man. He was a young guy, and he was a good friend of mine, and his name was Barry Hunter. And the second thing that's different is, it was not a homeless kid, alone on the streets of Washington, D.C., eating out of a dumpster and sleeping wherever he could. It was two brothers. One was 8 and one was 10, and the older brother was the protector of the younger. One became a 2-time world champion, and the other one presently is not far from becoming a champion himself. They've become an inspiration to people that are in the sport of boxing and outside the sport of boxing. And every time one of them fights on Showtime, the announcers always talk about the homeless boys that have made it to the top. If you don't believe me, you can check it out on the web. Or you can ask them, because they're sitting right there. Ladies and gentlemen, Lamont and Anthony Peterson.